It's Mo Bruno Roy, and welcome back to another episode of BTB TV.
Tim Johnson, Crosstalk Part 2. Picking up a bit where we left off, we're talking about you had this great road career. You went over to Europe right after winning a medal at the World Championships for cyclocross. You spent a year over there. Just tell me again about that year and how that set you up for the years following.
That year, the chance to go to Europe really happened at the post-race press conference. So we were just in the podium, we got our medals, it's freezing cold, we go inside, and it's some like high school gym in Poprad, Slovakia. And Bruce Fina of USGP was there with me, his good friend, Stu was there also. He starts chatting with Bart and Tommy, because the two Belgians that were ahead of me on the podium, because I was the crazy random American they'd never seen getting on the podium. They're like, what the hell's going on with this? So he ends up meeting them, getting their emails or addresses, whatever it was at the time. And so we did a swap. So they came for a month in the summer, and then I would go.
Like Fitchburg or something, right?
Yeah, they did Fitchburg and Keene and Exeter maybe. We did a race in Ohio. They stayed at my mom's house. It was hilarious. But so I went over there from October to February, and I stayed with Bart.
Everyone knows Bart Wellens now, and he's become this huge sensation. Tell me your best story about living with Bart and traveling around. And you guys were 22, 23 years old.
So I was a year older than him, I think. Yeah, he was still under 23, and I was racing senior over there, but under 23 here in the States because rules hadn't changed yet. Bart, man. So here's my intro to Europe. So I go over there, I do a couple races here, then I leave. So I get there, my first race is Rue de Voorde. So Rue de Voorde is one of the biggest races they have. It's one of their season openers. And I do this race, I'm racing with Sven and Adrie van der Poel and Richard Grunendahl, all these guys. And I finish maybe top 20, which is a really good ride. Mm-hmm. And I'm going down this long finish straight. It's like 800 meters long. And I'm so happy that I've just done this race. And it was hard as hell, tons of running and mud and everything, that I do a wheelie. And I pull a wheelie right across the finish line. And it's like windy. And I hit the deck, doing a wheelie across the finish line. And so I had gone over there, and the Europeans who had seen the Worlds the previous season were interested to see how I was going to do. So there was a live radio interview for me right after I had just crashed over the finish line. And I remember having this microphone shoved in my face, and there I am. He's like, so, Tim, how do you like your first race in Europe? And I'm like, oh, yeah, it was really good. I mean, just the most embarrassing moment of my entire life, actually, up until that point. But Bart was pretty funny about it. He was supportive, actually. Bart, my other best story about Europe was later on that winter, it's December, going to the finish line of a race in Northern Holland, and I crash in a finish line sprint, and I break my collarbone. Mm-hmm. Bart brings me to the hospital. He actually helps me get undressed. He helps me get into a shower, and he helps wash like an inch of mud off me as I'm holding this like totally broken collarbone. I mean, really, like, truly a super nice and really down-to-earth guy for what we were doing. It was really a nice gesture.
And it's amazing how, what you guys were doing back then was just, he got to race in the U.S., just two young guys helping each other out, but it's amazing how that relationship has done so much now to just help that line of communication between bringing guys over to the U.S. and bringing World Cups and elite races, and Bart's always been there as a guy to be able to to speak on behalf of U.S. racing and vice versa.
Well, I think
For
an
you and
important thing to remember is that I went there to race cross. He didn't come here to race cross.
Right.
He didn't come back here to race cross at all until, 15 years later, 14 years later?
Right. But even just having raced the summer here and knowing enough about
Yeah.
being in communication and watching the scene because he knew you and because he knew the guys.
Yeah.
I know because we sat down with him for episode 1 of our
Yeah.
crosstalk, and he had just nothing but great things to say.
Yeah.
Let's jump ahead here. So we're gonna skip a bunch of great years and a bunch of great stories throughout the middle there, but that's been fairly well. I used to have a website where we did interviews about that stuff all the time. Let's get into this season. The last few seasons you turned full-time professional cyclocross.
Yeah.
You really struggled off the bat. Then you sort of found your way back, but it by no means was 2009, Tim, or when you had last won nationals. Coming into this season, there was a lot of speculation that this would be your last year. This would just be a farewell tour, and you're really just, you were going to give it a go, but you're ultimately just showing up to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And pretty much right from the gun, you've just been on fire all season long. You've been winning races like you haven't done for years and years. What happened? How did you figure it out? Because it's one thing if you do that when you're, and this is not just to call you old, it's one thing when you do that when you're 25 and 26 and then you find your way back.
Right.
But usually when things start to go wrong in your mid, late, or whatever, you don't usually see someone come back from that. How did you figure that out?
Well, I think I just had to figure out what I was doing. It's easy to say, 2010 was this, 2011 was this,
Right.
2012 was this. But really, that's not how it is. I mean, it's always a process. And 2011 was really tough. I mean, I was given this opportunity of, hey, by the way, you don't have to race all summer long and do every stage race in America and not only do the race, but actually be a part of the race and help the team and work on strategy. And there's all this behind the scenes stuff that you do as part of a pro road team to, I was almost like I was part of management
Yeah, you got to earn
in a
your
lot of
paycheck,
ways. Yeah, and actually, you do have to earn a paycheck, but you also have to, the job description that I had was not just racing my bike. So all of a sudden, I didn't have that. And I had all this time. I had a huge list of things that I wanted to do. Go to Leadville and go to Breck Epic and might as well do them back to back. Why not? I mean, it's random stuff like that. But then right at Washington, I put myself in the position to do a lot of the things that I couldn't do before. But whether or not those were good for my racing, that's what I figured out. So
yeah, because
2011,
it's almost like you were treating it like, I retired, but you were...
Yeah, but I still had to race
still
at
had
the
to
end of
race.
this at the end of this vacation. So it's like, was I actually training to get ready for something? No, I was just doing. And I think I learned a lot about what it means to focus on something and to try and put your best effort towards a goal. Because until then, my goal is really simple: is to be somewhat fresh, fit, and tactically aware going to any stage race as a part of United Healthcare or HealthNet.
Mm-hmm.
That is really simple. To do something where it's like I've got 5 or 6 months before my first big race, just do enough to get ready for that. I didn't even know how to approach that because I'd never figured it out. So I was really glad that 2011 was not the year that we had Worlds in Louisville.
Yeah.
So having the chance to fix that for 2012, for fall of 2012 into 2013 in Louisville, I was lucky to actually figure out how to become more consistent, how to fit my training in with my obligations with Volkswagen or Rebel or Cannondale, because being a professional athlete is not just being an athlete. And I think that that's a lesson that I learned in 2011 and a little bit earlier than that, but it's not just about how fast you pedal, but why are you out there? Why are people supporting you? It's because you want to show people that what you do is great, you love it, because a lot of people work, a lot of people can't ride as fast as you, they can't do the same things you can on a bike. So to have the opportunity of doing these things that other people can't and having a good time doing it, that's why companies support you. But along with that comes work, and you have to make yourself available and travel and time and all this other stuff.
And that's where the success you've had this season, I think, was most surprising to me, is that you're at that point in your career where it's really not everything hinges on your results. That Red Bull is there whether you're first or third, or maybe even if you retire, and the same for Volkswagen. You have a great relationship with Cannondale and the team, and so on. So really the motivation for you to come back and to win races and really be competitive this year, I mean, that all had to come from you because you wanted to be.
It was
that.
totally.
There was nobody pushing you, I can imagine, saying, hey, Tim, if this doesn't happen, there's no contract for you next year or whatever.
I think the best possible thing that I was able to figure out was that I'm extremely lucky to be doing what I'm doing. And it's an opportunity that not many people have, and I've got it. And it wouldn't be a shame for me to, but it would be like it would almost be a crime to not respect the fact that it's something that's unique. And I really, it's still a surprise to be able to do what I'm doing. It truly is, because I think having made the decision that I was going to take this year and probably retire at the end of this year, it brought that a lot closer. It brought what's next closer. It brought where would I work, who would I work with. I have great relationships with some companies that have made me offers, hey, when you're done racing, come work for us. And I pursued it, and I looked into it as best as I possibly could, because I really want to take that seriously, and it's a step that I've been preparing for a long time. But as much as I prepared for what was going to come next with riding, I still didn't know what I already had. So when I realized what I've got, it was this amazing weight off my shoulders. And so the workouts were simple. To get ready for a race, you have to get yourself fit. And so to get fit, you got to work hard. And training became training, and travel became travel. Instead of this huge, giant thing just mushed together, and the weight of pressure and expectations and internal, wants, are like, that's what was weighing me down. So now I think it just brought a lot of clarity to what I was looking at.
What, on September 1st, what was the percentage likelihood that you were going to retire at the end of the season?
95%.
So 95%. Here we are. We're filming this in December, and you're saying you are 100% going to race next year.
Yeah.
Tell me about, you explained kind of what you realized, but tell me about the moment. Maybe was it a race? Was it a particular result? Was it, that's a huge change in mindset. When did that come about, and how did that come about?
I think that 5% was a large 5%. It was a weighty 5%. It wasn't any one thing. It was realizing that what I'm doing is really fun, and it's something that I feel great about being able to do. It's like I've known for years that my legs hurt. You're a bike racer; they always hurt. They're, you do a workout, it hurts. You sweat. You feel like you race. The best races are the ones you hurt the most, because you can keep pushing so hard that you suffer and suffer and suffer. And I realized that kind of suffering is really, it gives a lot back. 2011, I was trying to suffer and I couldn't. I was in a position mentally where I was getting defeated, and I was getting defeated and getting defeated, and I wouldn't even give myself the chance to suffer. 2012, I kind of saw that come back a little bit, but then I'd have a really bad weekend and just question everything. And then, going through the summer, I wanted to have a great season before I stopped. And as I looked closer and closer to stopping, it became more and more obvious that this is something that I really like, and this is something that I feel good about. And so it kind of gave me this new chance to suffer. And it's like, suffering is not a bad thing. It's not a bad word. It's like, it's an all-fulfilling word in some ways, because you feel good about the effort that you're putting out.
So tell me about, we're sort of done, so to speak, with the domestic season here. We have essentially one race left in North America that matters, and that is Boulder, Colorado, January, the national championships. That race, it seems like even more so in cyclocross than, I mean, obviously people know how little it means in the road, just in terms of past importance the top riders have put on it. Mountain biking, it's great. And cyclocross nationals are a really big deal. Not only the fans and the media cares about them, but the athletes. I mean, they, like, you know, you look at Jeremy all year, he's been saying how he's basically changed his entire strategy to, you know, not be quite as good for the whole season with the interest of just nationals. How important is nationals to you, and what are your thoughts as we get pretty close to that race now?
It's funny, just the other day I realized that I won Elite Nationals in 2000.
Yeah.
14 years ago. It's a huge day. It's a day that makes the year. It makes a career. I think having the opportunity to line up with a legitimate shot is something that's special, and not everybody gets. You know, everyone can line up and race, but whether or not they have a true shot is something different. And really, for me, it's less about being a race that I have to do well at. It's a race that I want to do well at. Like, I really have, I don't know. I want to have a good race. Whether or not I do, I'll find out that day. But I have that motivation.
Knowing what you know about Boulder, the course, the altitude, what the likely conditions are. Obviously, we raced there a couple months ago at the Boulder Cup. Is it a venue? Is it a place that you go in truly believing that you can win on that day, or do you have reservations at all about any of those factors?
I've had great races in Boulder, and I've had bad races in Boulder. You know, whether or not that's going to come that day, I don't know. It's a new course. I rode it. I helped figure it out. I don't think I can say at all whether or not I'm going to line up and feel like this is my day, because and I don't think that also sets someone else. I don't go into a race thinking I'm going to win, and I don't go into a race thinking I'm going to get crushed. It happens that day because that's a totally separate day, and I can't tell you how it's going to be from, you know, now 5 weeks out, 4 weeks out. But I know that Boulder with altitude doesn't affect me. The dry air doesn't affect me. It's just
Obviously, the cold weather doesn't affect you.
Yeah, the cold weather. I mean, it could be 60 and sunny, and it could be 5 degrees and snowing. You know, it could be either way. I don't think we're going to have any clue what's going to happen that day.
You going to Worlds this year?
Yeah.
You haven't been to Europe all season long.
Yeah.
That goes for actually just most of the North American men. As we start to see some reports come out that next year and in years future, they're really looking at bringing a lot of these top European races over there and really trying to just intermingle, so to speak, between the two communities out there. I guess briefly first, why no Europe this season? I mean, I guess it's sort of obvious, but then as you look at the World Championships, is that a goal on the same level of something like the national championships? I mean, it sounds like it should be. It's the world. It should be even bigger, but
yeah.
It almost feels like it's not.
So I didn't go to Europe much this year just because I realized, and it's taken me a lot of years to figure it out, that traveling 2 or 3 or 4 times back and forth to Europe is a killer. You know, it's just, you can't race well here and you can't race well there. You know, it's funny, I would listen to Bart or Rob Peters or Lars van der Haar, these guys talk about the jet lag, and they're so tired from Cross Vegas or going to Madison or wherever they went. And I understood it and I saw it, but I didn't want to repeat it because I don't want to sit here and whine. Oh, I have to go to these World Cups. I have to go to the U.S. But it does affect the racing. You know, it affects how deep you can push yourself, how much you can take a race seriously or not. So I didn't want to go to Europe this year until after Nationals because I wanted to give myself the chance to race well at the races here. And I want to give myself a chance to race well at the Worlds there. I don't want to show up totally smoked, which is what I did last year. I did the year before that. Hoogerheide, I am going to take that seriously. It's been a race where I've had a really good result before. 2 years ago,
The World Cup.
or 3 years ago, the World Cup.
Yep.
I was in California. I was training out of Malibu. I was staying at my friend Ben's house, and we were riding these hills, and it was raining and cold. And I get to Europe, and I'm like, I actually feel really good. And 3 weeks before that, over Christmas, Lynn and I, we went to dinner with our coach. She was coached by this guy for 14 years, and he was helping me out. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to go to Worlds. Like I'm tired. I don't really feel that good. It was December 2010, and he's like, well, of course you don't have to go. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. Why do you have to go? You don't have to go. I'm like, yeah, but I kind of want to, and Worlds be good. It was in St. Wendell, and so I decided at the end of dinner I'm gonna go to Worlds, and he's like, great. Well, let's make it worthwhile. I'm like, okay, great. So we had this training plan, and it was 3 weeks, and I did every workout, and I did them as best I possibly could. I get back to Europe. We go to the World Cup in France, and flying, like top 10, great race. Lead group going to the last lap, just crash. I finished like 12th or something. The next week is Hoogerheide, great course, fast, muddy, uphill, downhill. And I start just like a usual start, and all of a sudden I'm catching the lead group on the finish straight, and I go into the lead group, and Stibar attacks, and there I am, second place, and I'm chasing Stibar. I'm like, I didn't even think of it. I didn't even consider why I was in the front of this group, but I just was, because I had 1 hour to go as fast as I could. And there I am racing. And watching a video of it just makes me laugh, because I rode like an idiot. I truly did.
Sounds like a Jeremy Duran kind of ride.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah, except I didn't get frostbite and I didn't crash 15 times, but sorry, Jeremy. But there I was, like, riding top 5 for 45 minutes, and I kind of flailed the last 12 minutes, and I got like 15th or whatever it was. But that is like such a great feeling, to have a good race at the race where it matters. And that was always something that I had going for me, is that I always picked it up at the races I needed it. I picked it up at the races that meant the most. I had this ability to really get my mind around the fact that this is the chance to put it all out there and to make it worthwhile. And so to be able to do that at Worlds is going to be a great highlight to this season, just like it would be at Nationals. I guess I feel more prepared now to invest the mental energy into having it all go the way that I want it to go, and not being afraid of it going the wrong way, which I think is how I had approached a few races in the last couple of years. Oh, I hope it goes like this, or else.
Yeah.
Now it's like, I want it to go well.
All right. To wrap things up, you, like we said, you are, whether you race next year or 2 years, or you're towards the end here. You've had a lot of time to figure all these things out that you talk about.
Yeah.
And you've been sort of the first guy to do a lot of these things, including become sort of North America's full-time cross guy. As we said earlier, Jeremy Powers now has announced that he's going to take on that role as a full-time cross rider and give up the road. What's a piece of advice that you'd offer to him as he goes into that next year? And we saw how difficult it was for you, and just for the, I'm sure, many people following him that will then sort of follow in these footsteps. How do you do it? How do you become a successful full-time North American cyclocross racer?
Well, I think it's the basics. It's not knowing what you're doing, and that's okay. To assume that you don't know what you're doing and you hope for the best. I think that you get in a lot of trouble when you don't have humility as to, like, being able to learn lessons is something that, if you leave it on or you turn it off, like that ability to always to be aware that what you're doing might not be the best way, but you kind of step back enough to be able to see the right way. I've made mistakes in how I have done this, but I think they're valuable mistakes. So if you just think that you're never gonna make a mistake is like the worst possible way. I think that how this works as a business, it takes some effort, and it's also, I think it's an effort that's almost as valuable as the riding itself, and I think it's going to get more like that. So surrounding yourself with the people that are going to help support you, not just ask for something in return. It's like, what we do as an athlete, you're alone on your bike with a number on, but it takes this huge amount of effort to get there. And I think that's a real valuable lesson that I've learned over the years, is that it's never just about you. It's always it's accumulating the effort of all those people to be a part of it. But I think as racers now, I think we have a huge opportunity going forward, is that what's happening in U.S. Cross has been this huge process of getting the going international, getting these races, getting these points, and learning the UCI and Pro CX and USA Cycling, and where we're going to go from here with the sport is going to be really important as a career. And so keeping an eye on that, but not letting it get in the way of the racing itself. I think that's been a lesson that I've learned too.
All good stuff. Well, good luck at Nationals. Good luck at Worlds. Thank you for sitting down. See you next time.
Thanks for having me.